I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. We spend most of our lives working, yet so many of us have been taught that ambition has to come at the cost of our health and our weekends. On this episode of On Brand, I'm joined by Amy Leneker, a leadership consultant who has helped over 100,000 leaders move from soul-crushing burnout to what she calls the unstressing method. We're diving into her upcoming book, Cheers to Monday, to discuss why finding joy is actually a high-performance business strategy and how leaders can finally break the cycle of exhaustion to connect more authentically with their teams and their brands. My interview with Amy is coming right up. But first, Amy Leneker, welcome to On Brand.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
So I love so many things, including the title of your book, Cheers to Mondays. I feel like, maybe before reading your book, people are like, Cheers to Mondays, and
Yeah.
a little more teeth gritting, but maybe we can get to a place where that's true. And I also wonder what led you here. Your own personal story seems pretty unique as well.
Yes, thank you. It was really a teeth gritting story that led me there because I burnt out in a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad way.
Just like Alexander.
Exactly. My favorite children's book of all time. And I didn't just burn out once, it happened twice. And so
Mm.
after the second time, that's when I realized I've got to do something different because I don't want this to be the pattern for the rest of my life. So that's what led me here.
That's awesome. So, one of the things listeners to the show know that I'm a longtime word nerd, and I love you talk about. And you asked me before we got on if I'm from Iowa or a fan of Iowa. I'm all of the above, lifelong Iowan here. And I bring that up because when we talk about resilience, a lot of times, especially here in the great Midwest,
Mhm.
it sometimes gets tangled up with toughing it out. But you argue that our culture gets resilience wrong. Say more about that.
I think we get it unequivocally wrong. And having been raised in the Midwest, I understand what you're saying, that work ethic is strong. But just like any strength, if we overuse it, it can become our greatest weakness. And that's absolutely what happened to me with overwork. In the beginning, it led to all sorts of promotions, and that was great. And it led to all sorts of accolades, and that was great. But it also led to a devastating burnout, which was the opposite of great.
Hmm.
And so resilience, I think we've gotten it completely wrong because so often in organizations, we think about stress, we think about burnout as an individual problem. Well, Nick is feeling stressed. He needs to be more resilient. Well, not necessarily. If you're in a workplace where you are surrounded by system stress that's making it almost impossible for you to be successful, there's no amount of resilience that's going to get you through that.
That's such a good point, and I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what we hear, because even as you said that, I'm like, we talk about being resilient. It's like, yep, suck it up. You can do this.
Mhm.
So I love your unstressing method because I love the idea of, we're all so stressed today,
Yeah.
of de-stressing or unstressing. And I like the idea of that word,
Mhm.
but it sometimes seems like a promise that I don't know how we can make and keep to ourselves.
Mhm.
Luckily, you've got a framework, and it starts with SEE, and ends with celebrate. I wonder if you'd walk us through that framework, what it looks like, and how we can use it.
I would love to because it is so simple. It is so simple because we've overcomplicated stress. We've overcomplicated how to get through it. So, really simple steps. So, step one, we've got to see it differently. And what that means is we have got to see everything that's contributing to your work stress. So we got to write it all down. We can't even get to sorting it if we don't know what we're dealing with. I think about it as if you are cleaning out a messy closet or you're cleaning out a messy attic. You've got to pull everything out first. So that's step one. We've got to see the stressors you're dealing with. Then we've got to see it through the lens of, is this important to me? And do I have control over it? We have to ask ourselves those two questions for every one of those stressors. And based on your answers, then it lives on the unstressing matrix, a really simple 4 quadrants. It now has a home in the matrix. So in step 2, we sort your stress into actionable categories. Most of the people I work with make the mistake that they think work stress is just work stress, but it's not. There are 5 distinct kinds of work stress. So in step 2, we sort it into those 5 buckets so we can actually figure out what are we going to do with this thing. That puts us in step 3, because the good news is wherever your stressor land on that matrix, there's a next step for you. No overthinking, no analysis paralysis, just I've got a next thing that I can do. Which is, then it leads us to step 4, the best part, which is we've got to celebrate this thing every single time we use it. Every time we make a deliberate choice to say, I'm going to do something different about stress, to me, I think that's worth celebrating.
So my Midwestern baggage returns. Where are you from? I'm an Iowan. So where did you?
Ohio. I was born and
Ohio.
raised in Ohio.
Okay, one of the our fellow vowel states, so
Yes.
that people inexplicably somehow confuse.
All the time. Why is that? It's so funny. I've had people say, well, it's the same thing. No, it's actually not the same thing. They're two completely different places.
I know. But my baggage,
Yeah.
back to that, is you said it's the best part, getting to
Yeah.
celebrate. And I think oftentimes celebration is difficult for us, especially. It seems there's almost like an inverse relationship. As people are high achieving leaders, it can
Mhm.
become harder to celebrate. Why is that? And why is it something that we should take the time for?
I think a large part of it is because we're always looking for the next thing. I know for me, one of the reasons I promoted so quickly is I was a heat seeking missile for problems. I would find problems, I'd solve them, I'd find the next one. And organizations really like that. The problem is you never get that moment to pause and say, wow, this thing just went really, really well. I just completed a national workforce study on the state of stress and joy at work. And celebrating an achievement was in the top 5 things that cause us joy at work. Just that little pause to say, man, Nick, that project was huge and you nailed it. Great. And it has to be authentic. It can't be fake. We know when people are shining us on, but to have those real moments of authentic appreciation and celebration is one of the top 5 leading drivers of joy at work.
So people might hear that word and think, okay, celebration. What do I do? Do I need to have a pizza party? What? I think sometimes we could stand with a more diverse definition of what it looks like to celebrate something, because my mind goes straight to pizza in the break room.
Right. I love this for you. But I think it can be whatever feels right in the moment. Sometimes celebrating might be, I'm just going to actually take a lunch break today and I'm going to spend 45 minutes just reveling in the fact that this is finished. I keep this confetti cannon on my desk because you never know when you just need to set off a confetti cannon. So there's all different levels of, I use it sparingly, just so you know. I set one off a few months ago and it took me so long to clean it up. I was cleaning confetti for a very long time. But all of that to say, there's little celebrations and there's big ones, and then there's lots of stuff in between. And we make the mistake at work when we believe that everyone else wants to celebrate the way that we do. So it's just knowing each other well enough to say, okay, at the end of this project, what would feel good for you? What would make that have a pause to make you feel really good about your contribution?
Here I start with pizza in the break room, and you've got a confetti cannon sitting right there.
I will send you one. Say the word, and it will land on your doorstep in just a few days.
It does make me think of the Seinfeld where George is selling computers with his dad, and he's got his childhood rival Lloyd Braun also
Uh-huh.
selling computers, and he's ringing a bell every time he
Yeah.
makes a sale, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I've always wanted to ring a bell.
I love that
Uh,
episode. Yeah.
yeah.
So funny. They're in the garage and the mom it's hysterical. That's a great
Yeah,
one.
and you've got for the sake of clarity, I forget his dad has some sort of I'm Mr. Costanza and you're Costanza,
Right.
so that the three of them didn't get confused.
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where George Costanza lessons in business might stop. But there are some good ones, like
Mhm.
I'm out, leave the meeting on a high note is
That's true. Napping under your desk, very wise in terms of wellness. Lots of really good tips there.
I think you're onto something here. Next book. Next book.
Yeah, there we go.
On Brand will be right back after this. Now, back to the show. So, you mentioned beyond the personal aspect that joy is a smart business strategy as well. How does a leader's personal joy impact the way their team communicates with both internally and externally?
For two main reasons. So, the first one is that I found in my research just how many people say that joy is essential to doing their best work. So, we found that 79% of employees said, I need joy in order to do my best work. That number jumped to 89% for executives. Isn't that startling? 89% who say, in order to do my best work here every day, I need to feel joy. And yet, just over 40% said, I feel it regularly at work. So, we've got a huge gap in what we want at work and what we're getting. So, that's the first way is that we know it's a driver of good performance. The second is that joy is wildly contagious, wildly contagious. The same way that stress is contagious, we found that joy even more so. One of the questions that we asked was, if you feel joy at work, does that spill over into your life outside of work? And we asked, if you feel stress at work, does that spill over into your life outside of work? The number of people that reported that joy spills over was even higher than the number of people that reported that stress spills over. So there's no question that it is a performance strategy and it is wildly contagious, not just in our workplaces, but it ripples out into our families and our communities too.
So I love, in addition to our Midwest connection, I'm also a framework person. So I
Yeah.
love that, when you can tackle something, especially when it's something like de-stressing, that how do we untangle this and
Mhm.
do it, but also with joy. I think on the other side of the equation, it's easy to make it into the character from Inside Out and
Right.
while joy is great, who doesn't love joy?
Yeah.
It can make it okay, but how do I go do that? And you've got one of the best frameworks, easiest to remember, the ABCs of joy. And I wonder if you could walk us through that and how you might use it in some of the high stakes situations that leaders might find themselves in.
Sure, and I'm so glad that it resonated with you because that's the whole point is that a framework is only as valuable as whether or not it resonates, whether or not you can use it. So really simply, the ABC, the A is just awareness. Am I aware of joy as I'm moving through my day? And before the research, I was completely wrong about joy. And I trace it back to my Midwestern roots. So I'll be curious if this applies for you too. But what I believed about joy was that joy was something that would come after the stress. I needed to get through a big project or through a big deliverable or through fill in the blank, and then I would feel joy. The research shows that I was absolutely unequivocally wrong. That in fact, joy is what helps us navigate stress. Joy helps us build a buffer against future stress. So I had it completely wrong. So the A is just awareness. Do I understand what joy is? Do I know that it's here right now and it doesn't have to be postponed? The second one is going to seem silly, but the B is for breath. And here's why. I am a certified mediator, so I sit in rooms with lots of conflict. And I will watch how people breathe. And the vast majority of people are breathing up here in their chest. They're breathing in that anxiety breath. Almost impossible to access joy when you're breathing from up here. Almost impossible to be running on autopilot and still access joy. So the B comes for breath. And then the C is my favorite, which is connection. What are the connections in your workplace? What are the connections outside of work that are creating those conditions for joy for you? And it may not be as simple. I'm thinking of some of your listeners. They probably can't go to work tomorrow and say, "Well, I listened to this podcast and you don't bring me joy, so I'm not going to go to this meeting with you." That's probably not an option. But what we can do is be aware of that relationship, be mindful of what it's doing to our energy at work, and then structure the rest of our day accordingly.
I was talking about breath and leadership communication, and yeah, all the time feel like I see the shoulders whenever you talk about breathing, but it's this stuff from down here, from the diaphragm, and
Mhm.
it does. I always feel like, you must get it too, because I can feel the room like, oh, here we get to the crunchy stuff. He's going to talk about breathing.
Mhm.
Um, but boy, talk about a difference in results as well. So extremely important to stay on top of, and it's easy to not be mindful of and to lose. It sounds crazy to say lose track of your breathing, but
Yeah.
I think it happens a whole lot more
I
than
do too.
than
And
we
if we
think.
look at how so many calendars are set up during the day, we're set up to fail. If you're running from one meeting to the next or hopping from one Zoom conversation to the next with really out ever a moment to catch your breath, for lack of a better word, then it's no wonder that that stress compounds as we move through our day.
So you suggest that our best changes from day to day. How can leaders communicate that reality to their teams without feeling like they're losing authority or consistency as well?
I think it's a balance. So I think what I always encourage leaders to do is to be as curious as possible, to
Mhm.
be as just insatiably curious and ask, how challenging has your stress been? I think it's one of the most important questions that a leader can ask. And what I encourage them then to do is to stop. Don't say anything more because often, sometimes people want to define challenging. Well, you can't, because what you think of as challenging, someone else may not think of that as challenging at all. And sometimes leaders will want to put a time frame on it. They'll want to say, "So, Nick, how challenging has your stress been this week?" Well, if what's causing you stress happened a month ago, now you've completely missed the boat on the data you're going to get. And the third mistake I see leaders make is they start to differentiate between work and life. And you can't. You can't compartmentalize stress because you carry your stress with you wherever you go. So leaders don't have to be mental health counselors. They don't have to be your best friend. And frankly, they shouldn't. But they do need to understand how challenging your stress is because it has a huge impact on your ability to be successful at work.
So, as mentioned earlier, your book is titled Cheers to Monday. For the person, and as I say this, I realize all these episodes come out on a Monday. So
Yay!
that's either good or they're thinking, yeah, I could have used this last night.
Right.
So next week, when you've got someone that is Sunday night, got the dreads, what's one small see or sort action they can take right now to change whatever Monday narrative they might have?
What they can do immediately, and what I hope that they do, is look at the 5 kinds of stress to see which of those 5 they're feeling. And here's why. Because one of the types of stress, which is system stress, is one that you cannot self care your way out of. You cannot hop on a meditation app and meditate your way out of system stress. If you are in a place that is disrespectful, that's allowing bullying, that is full of inequality, you cannot unstress your way through that. And so to recognize that, because otherwise the tendency to stay in those positions longer than we should is really high. What we found is just under half of American workers report staying in jobs longer than they wanted because the stress would made it too hard to look for something else.
Mm.
And isn't that heartbreaking? And yet
Yeah.
I've been there. I think of
Yeah.
the I
Hmm.
think of the one time in my life when I had the Sunday scaries. I had a horrible boss and I did feel frozen. I did feel so exhausted by the workday that looking for a new job felt impossible.
Well, that it's. I mean, like you said, it's hard to hear, but it's inspiring that there's something to do about it
Yes.
with this book. That we might, to kind of come full circle back to where I started, instead of saying "Cheers to Monday,"
Yeah.
we are honestly saying a legit cheers with a relaxed jaw.
Yes. Yeah, if
So,
you just look at oh, sorry, you go ahead.
oh, you.
Or I was gonna say, if you just look at the numbers, so the average person is gonna work about 90,000 hours, give or take, in our lives. That equates to 2,109 Mondays. So every time I hear someone say how much they dislike Mondays or they can't stand Mondays, I think that's 2,109 days of your life. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up. So if you're in that position, let's not stay there.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, all the math, looking at one's life and everything else. I was going to wrap up. Glad I didn't because I have one more question I want your take on.
Mhm.
Where do you come down on the if you have a job you'll love, you'll never work a day in your life? Some people really don't like that one. Other people like live by it.
I think it's crap. That's my technical term for
Say
it.
say more about
And
that.
here's why. I think a statement like that can lead to shame and blame really quickly. So now you're saying if I feel stressed, that means I don't love my job. That means I don't love my work. I think it's too black and white. Some of the leaders that I know who are wildly successful don't feel that way every day. And I think, and frankly, I don't trust people who do. If I
Mm.
meet someone who says, I feel great every single day, I don't think about this as work, I don't trust you. Like something about that just doesn't ring true for me. Is there a valid point though that meaning and purpose matter? Yes. We found that having meaning in your work was the key driver of joy at work. So yes, meaning matters, purpose matters. But to go as far as to say this is no longer going to feel like work, I think that goes too far.
Well said. Like it. Now, I have, speaking of relaxed jaw, cheers to Monday. My jaw from laughing so many times and smiling throughout our conversation
Mhm.
has certainly been going, and it's going to keep going, I imagine, because it's my turn to ask you, Amy, for a brand that's made you smile recently.
The first one that comes to mind is Costco. I am a Costco person, true and true. And a million years ago, I worked at Costco when I was in college. This will show you how old I am. So I worked there when you had to call out the numbers. Do you remember that? Are you familiar with that? So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, go on.
before scanners, there would be that person that called out well, that was me. Like I would go to sleep at night having numbers of food in my head just spinning around. So I got to experience them as an employee, but now it's one of my favorite places to shop. They have really good values that show up in everything they do. So Costco gets my vote.
It's got me thinking too, because I love Costco, and you talked about working there. I grew up working various grocery jobs, so it's a job that I know and love.
Mhm.
but you don't often think, oh, I think I'd go back there. But, it's like, wow, I think maybe I could. That and Trader Joe's.
Yes, yes, right.
I would love to talk about, and I'd have a bell to ring.
Of course you would.
So
Do it all in one. Your whole life is culminating in one divine moment.
this is going to happen for me.
I have no doubt.
Amy, where can we go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Thank you for asking. AmyLeneker.com is the best place.
And if someone's listening to this in their car, let's make sure we're saying it's Amy, obviously, but Leneker is Leneker. Kerer. All right. And if you still thought, wait, what? I didn't. You can find links to everything that we've talked about at onbrandpodcast.com. Amy Leneker, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you, Nick. It was great to see you.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.